Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, what do you think about Modern?
Oh, man. So, I mean, obviously, you know, with another Modern Pro Tour on the horizon with probably the most controversial experiment with mulligans in Magic's history, there's a lot going on here, and in particular, obviously, there's some new wrinkles. First of all, obviously Modern Horizons won't be out yet by the time the Pro Tour rolls around, but the new London redraw, mulligan rule involving, you draw all your mulligan hands are 7 cards, and you just have to put on the bottom a number of cards equal to the number of times you mulliganed. That rule they just announced is going to be testable. It's going to be playable on Magic Online for 10 days prior to the Pro Tour. So that'll be kind of an interesting experiment. Like, I wonder how much is that letting people test versus how much is that letting them get out ahead of, because at that point it'll be too late for them to change, even if it looks catastrophic.
What would be catastrophic about it? Is just because they're testing it in a Modern Pro Tour?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to a more extreme. Let's picture we were playing literally Vintage, right? So if you were playing Vintage and you were playing a dredge deck, what do you think the chances are that you can just mulligan into a Bazaar of Baghdad?
Pretty high. Like, I mean, how many cards?
Way over 99%.
Look, how many cards do you actually need to operate if you have a Bazaar of Baghdad? 0? None, right? You just use it,
other
right?
cards.
So, yeah, you easily just get it every game, and it's actually maybe even better if you don't have any cards, because you might accidentally draw something you want to be in the graveyard.
But that Bazaar lets you do that. It's better. It's definitely better to have the cards, because the cards are like, think of the cards as being like selection for what kinds of things you're graveyarding. Every card is like one more chance at a Golgari Grave Troll instead of a Stinkweed Imp, for instance.
Yeah, but I mean, so does the Vintage Dredge deck use cards like Narco Amoeba or Creeping Chill that you never want to have in your hand? Or it doesn't matter that much.
No, you still do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not like Bazaar of Baghdad is milling the Creeping Chills from your, like, it doesn't increase the chances that you're going to mill Creeping Chills. Like, each time you Bazaar, it still counts as just discarding them. You have to dredge the Creeping Chills if you want them to be that way.
That's why I was saying maybe there's some it's irrelevant, right? So
no, you're right. It's a non-zero amount of utility of they're still in your deck somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's not even close to as impactful as having more Golgari Grave Troll looks, I think. But either way, the point is that it's just deterministic. It's just off the board. And it's weird, too, because, like, obviously you can also just be off the board to get Leyline of the Void, right? But it's just very, very distorting and warping.
It's a very different experience than we've had before. But
if you go down to Modern, you can get to stuff like, say you're going to play a Goryo's Vengeance deck, right? Which is very fast and very powerfully dependent on the combination of cards you draw, but doesn't require very many cards to win, right? Like, you can have like just an overwhelming position with, if you have Faithless Looting, Goryo's Vengeance, Grizzlebrand, or any other, but Grizzlebrand and then 2 land, that 5-card hand is already like just a monstrous favorite for having an overwhelming advantage on the second turn, regardless of what you draw. So you can look at 7 cards, and if that doesn't have that amazing combination or some other amazing combination, you can go to 6 and then you can go to 5. And if you go to 5, that 5-card hand is better than most 7s. It's just, you can just cherry pick the combination. So your ability to assemble a specific combination of cards is so much greater with the London Mulligan rule.
So the thing is, like, the London Mulligan rule, I think, especially because of game ones, just super incentivizes decks that want to have certain combinations of cards. And I think, like, the London Mulligan apologists are saying that you can get, more looks at a ley line, for example. But That doesn't help you get game one back, right? That's kind of the is that the tension?
That's part of it. I mean, that's to say nothing of how much, if this mulligan rule picks up, it doesn't exactly, it's kind of uncomfortable to think about this mulligan rule in the best of one world suggested by Arena.
Ugh.
You know what I mean? Like, this is
best of one modern.
And so, and remember that big $1 billion tournament in Boston is best of one rules. That's going to be a weird tournament. But the London experiment is going to be an interesting one in terms of how much does it change the equation for people who want specific combinations of cards as opposed to people who want raw material. Because when you're playing a deck like if you're playing some Jeskai deck or some Grixis, Corey style deck, the actual quantity of cards you have matter a ton. And if you're playing a deck that has creatures that cost 4 or 5 or whatever,
you mean that you would actually cast?
That you would actually cast, you need to have some cards. You need enough material to actually play that. Whereas there's just so many ways that if you can just win with a very small amount of power, or, a very small amount of mana, and if you just have the right sequence, this redraw rule really benefits that. So it'll be interesting to see. It's definitely a different animal. And it could easily be the case that maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's scary to look at, but remember, there were a lot of people who were scared way back with the Paris mulligan rule, where they were just thinking people were just going to be mulliganing like crazy to set up their combos then.
Well, to be fair, the first kind of legitimate combo win at the Grand International stage was at Paris, right? So Mike Long did take it down with Cadaverous Bloom. Prior to that Pro Tour, combo decks, they weren't yet then what they have become.
Totally. You are not wrong. You are not wrong. And this is sort of a bold, major step in that direction if it actually takes if it takes hold. And I wouldn't worry about the Bazaar of Baghdad thing too much either. I think that it's possible that this mulligan rule could be okay, except under a few specific circumstances, in which case they could just take action on those specific circumstances. But just in terms of fast combo at all, it'll be interesting to see, because it certainly sort of suggests things being faster. It's not, I know that it helps speed up your interaction too, but it makes everything so much faster, which then therefore decreases the number of interaction points and decision points.
Well, I think it's not just about pure speed. Like, if you just think about Dredge, right? Like a deck like Dredge and its ability to mulligan, one thing that I think of is just like, if you get like a Dredger, right? There's decks got a lot, right? Stinkweed Imps and Golgari Thugs and Life from the Loam, etc. And some way to get it into the graveyard, like a Faithless Looting, I think that you're going to have a very high likelihood of being able to put those two kinds of cards together, even if you're going to play a longer game than maybe a Goryo's Vengeance deck. But at the same time, you have with this, the ability to put cards back into your library with the London Mulligan rule. Like, the problem with like the Vancouver Mulligan is, you keep your 6-card hand, you get to scry or something, but you're stuck with the Narcomoeba in your hand, right? Like, this is also looting, right? It's also filtering for you at the same time. And like, it's really, really different, I think, as an experience to have a 6-card hand with a Narcomoeba in your hand and a 6-card hand where you keep the 7th card and put the Narcomoeba back in your deck when you're playing Dredge. Because Narcomoeba stinks in your hand.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
Like, you don't even want to discard it with Faithless Looting. It's not profitable to do that. It's just garbage.
It's something to discard, but it's generally not near the front, Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, Narcomoeba has an infinite return on investment when it's coming out for free, and it's just, like, not a great card to cast out of your hand.
See, I don't think so. I don't think it's an infinite on investment, because I think that every card that you mill is a resource, right? Like the fact that Golgari Grave Troll mills 6 instead of 5 like Stinkweed Imp is upside, right? You don't get to mill an unlimited number of cards. You only get to mill so many cards, and so every card you could mill has opportunity cost, right? Like, would you like how many Narcomoebas would you play if they were 0-1s? Maybe you'd still play, maybe you'd still play 4, but there's a point at which it's not worth the mill, because you could be milling something different, right? Like every Narcomoeba you mill could also be a Bridge from Below. And Bridge from Below has way more utility in your hand, since it still works if you discard it that way.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, if think about Narcomoeba as a card, right? This deck can do about 3 things with it. One thing you can do is to cast it, right? It's like people have cast it and won the game. It's fine. It's just a really, really bad Squadron Hawk when you're casting it. Really bad.
It's a bad Stormcrow.
Yeah, it's just not good. But you do it.
But what isn't,
Yeah, so you do it, and you live with it, and it chumps blocks for a turn, and that might be the turn that you needed to get the rest of your game going. The second thing you can do is you can dredge it, in which case it's coming up, and it's much better for that way than the other way. And the third thing you could do is just discard it to like a Faithless Looting or something. And I think in that case, it's like a fetch land that doesn't have a target, right? Like, this is the case where you were saying before, you still want to have the material, right? Like, having a card matters in the sense that you can't cast the Faithless Looting effectively if you don't have a card to discard, right? But
well, you can. You just discard the Dredgers. But not as effectively as having the option to keep something.
But you need to have something, right? Like, if you have no cards in hand and you do the Faithless Looting, you're just +2, -2, you can technically cast it, especially from the graveyard. People do this sometimes. Sometimes if you've got a Dredger,
but then
it's fine.
Yeah, right.
Or if you don't, like, you just say, all right, maybe I'll win the lottery on this, but you don't know. But the same thing with like a Creeping Show. Like, these are cards that are so valuable in other contexts, but you don't want to just be discarding them even though they're great in the graveyard. Versus, I think, like, a Bloodghast is fine to discard out of your hand.
Of course, it's not just fine; it's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
You're making a profit. Okay, so with all that said, what do you think of diving in of this past week's Modern stuff with, for instance, a few tweaks and upgrades to some of the archetypes, like a return of Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, in the hands of Vinay Gupta with a Titan Shift deck that had a couple minor so first of all, I don't know what you would call it, but when you have 1 Wood Elves, the natural Summoner's Pact target, what do you make of this? Like the 1 Hour of Promise, it's like, okay, probably just wants a 5th Primeval Titan of sorts to help round things out, right? And like 2 Sweltering Suns main deck, well, not everybody plays that, but it's a metagame call, and here we see a 2-2 split between Lightning Bolt and Sweltering Suns, which is understandable even if it's not, ubiquitous. 2 Explore, is there a more natural number? 1 Relic of Progenitus main deck, not the biggest deal. A totally understandable metagame call, if an unusual one. But 1 Wood Elves to Summoner's Pact for, presumably. 1 Wood Elves, what do you make of that?
I would not have thought about Wood Elves. And the thing that's weird to me about Wood Elves in particular is, that it gets a forest, right? So this,
like Stomping Ground specifically.
Well, it could get also a Cinder Glade, right? That's a forest.
Right, either one.
And I think in the case of Wood Elves, like, would it?
I mean, you get Sheltered Thicket too, for what it's worth.
I mean, there's just other cards that do a similar thing. I think that might be better than Wood Elves, right? Isn't there one that's in Standard right now that like looks at the top 5 cards, and you might potentially get a better land than a forest, right?
No, that's not going to put it in play, though.
Sure, it does.
No, not reliably. Not everything you need. The Wood Elves, like, why would you not do Wood Elves? Like, it just goes and gets the one you want. It's not like you want to get Valakut. Right. I don't know. I think the Wood Elves is better than the Standard one. It's even untapped. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, what is it? It's really Sakura Tribe Elder number 5. Is that the?
I guess.
I think that the more interesting thing is Prismatic Omen here. That's a card that we don't always see. Like, Prismatic Omen makes your life so much easier, right? Right? Like you just don't have to play like 70 cards. Like, wasn't that like the Invoke thing to play like a larger than 60 card?
Yeah, but you don't have to do that
to get enough mountains before.
Yeah, but you don't have to. It's never even close to that anymore. Now that you have access to both Sheltered Thicket and Cinderglade, it's actually just not even close. Like, for instance, this deck actually has 14 mountains. So we're pretty far away from that being an issue, you know.
But I still think, you know, I've always had a soft spot for Prismatic Omen, just in the case of Valakatex in the past that didn't have a lot of mountains, like they might have had 0.
Oh, yeah. I think the first Prismatic Omen you put in your deck has a lot of utility just in terms of adding a different dimension to your deck.
Yeah, you could actually just, like, play the Valakut and then with a Prismatic Omen in play, and you don't even have to go off, right? You don't have to Escape Shift. You don't have to Hour Promise. You can just play lands out of your hand and get them one trigger at a time.
Yeah. Yep.
I really like the sideboard strategy here, though. So Vinay played like mostly one-ofs. They had like 2 Relic of Progenitus to supplement the one in the main deck, a couple of Damping Spears, a couple of Obstinate Ballast, but almost everything else was a one-of, including some packed targets like Reclamation Sage, Thrun the Last Troll, presumably. But, I mean, I really like the Tireless Tracker. I feel like there should be more Tireless Tracker. Every time somebody plays Tireless Tracker in, like, a mid-range deck, I'm really happy. It's such good game with friends like Windswept Heath and Wooded Foothills. And it warms my heart whenever I see the tracker.
I mean, Tireless Tracker's been on the rise the last few weeks anyway. Like, last week, you know, we briefly talked about a variation of Black-Green that was using Tireless Tracker as its 3, and here we're seeing it show back up again from Max Schrantz in Golgari Midrange. In the 12th place list here, 3 Dark Confidant, 3 Scavenging Ooze, 4 Tarmogoyf, 3 Tireless Tracker, a Kalidas, Blood Chief of Get, and 4 Liliana the Veil, plus lots of usual black-green cards, including notably 4 Assassin's Trophies.
So I think in the Open, Black-Green was the last undefeated deck even after 2 days. The thing that I'm curious about this archetype is, why go Black-Green? It seems to me that, like, the Jund decks have access, almost by definition, to all the same assets as the Black-Green deck, plus they get Bloodbraid Elf. What do you think of, like, Lightning Bolt? What do you think about that, Patrick?
Okay, so first of all, I think Bloodbraid Elf is not what this deck needs. It's fine. You could do it, but it gets a lot worse the more that you play the stuff like Assassin's Trophy and Fatal Push instead of stuff like Lightning Bolt. And I think that the difference between Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt is very marginal. I actually don't think Lightning Bolt is at an all-time high right now at all. And a couple advantages of staying straight Golgari. First of all, one, you get to play 3 copies of Field of Ruin. And it's not like Treetop Village is like a bad creature land to have at all, right? Like, Treetop Village is actually more attractive, I think, in the current format than Raging Ravine. And then what's more...
just because of the activation cost is so much cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely just a cheaper, faster threat. And this deck doesn't take very much damage from its lands at all. Almost none, in fact. It has, 4 Verdant Catacombs and 2 Overgrown Tombs, but it has no other fetch lands and very little time do you actually have to shock yourself. This deck is just not going to damage itself anywhere close to what a Jund deck is. A Jund deck starts a Lava Spike down against a Burn deck, And then what's more, this deck is just not concerned about Blood Moon.
So, big...
I mean, it's not 0, but it's not a big deal.
But you're saying big incentives against aggro, and then big incentives against Blood Moon control.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you're just not getting that much out of your red cards, that other stuff does matter. So it's a question of, like, how much are you even getting? Like, what do you really get out of red? Slightly better artifact hate, Lightning Bolt, Bloodbraid Elf, anything else?
I think
Terminate, I guess.
Yeah, Terminate's okay. But if you're going to line up Terminate versus Fatal Push and Dismember, and it's certainly Assassin's Trophy, you get most of what you're getting out of Terminate between those cards, right?
Totally.
I think maybe Kolgan's Command might be a card that Jund has access to that Golgari Midrange doesn't have access to, and I do think that's a pretty meaningful card.
It's a great card. But, like, that's part of the reason for the push towards Tireless Trackers to help make up for the lack of Bloodbraid Elf and Kolgan's Command card advantage. You got to get the card advantage somewhere in a deck like this, and Tireless Tracker, I think, is just it's a good time for Tireless Tracker. I think, first of all, Tireless Tracker is not actually effortless for people to push, and there's just a big push for people to play Fatal Push instead of Lightning Bolt. Second of all, Tireless Tracker is a very effective way to take over the game against somebody who's playing a combo deck if you can just attrition with enough resources. If you can just throw enough stuff at them, like Tireless Tracker is a great threat for runaway, just a great runaway threat against somebody who isn't playing very much removal.
Well, this deck, for example, has got 2 Thoughtseizes and 4 Inquisitions in the main deck, along with Collective Brutality, and then obviously in sideboarded games you have even more potential disruption if you're playing against combo or something of that ilk. You can go kind of like disruption, play Tireless Tracker, and you know what their hand is at this point. You probably took away their ability to interact with the tracker, and at this point the tracker can be growing and drawing cards pretty effortlessly starting on turn 4, which I like a lot. One of the things that I do think that Black-Green loses relative to Jund, though, just going back to what you're saying on the mana base, it does not hurt itself very much. But 4 Verdant Catacombs and like nothing else means that it doesn't get as much action out of the Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, but I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, if you just spam lots of clues, like they all matter, they're all good, right? But like, every clue you don't sacrifice had a lot less value than the clues you do sacrifice, right?
Yes. I mean, the clues are unreal in this.
They just have such diminishing returns. Like, the more that you have, the less likely it is that the additional ones are ever going to get cracked.
Well, that's true. And also, if you're not cracking them, it's because you've got a full grip or you want to do something else with your mana. What do you think about Tarmogoyf in this deck? I feel like Tarmogoyf is... you said Lightning Bolt's at a low. I think it might be at an all-time low in the history of the modern format. But
I like it.
No, you love the Goyf here.
I like Tarmogoyf. I like it. Yeah, I like it. I like it better than Dark Confidant or Scavenging Ooze.
Really?
Yeah, I like Tarmogoyf, man.
I think Ooze is good right now. I think Confidant is underrepresented.
Yeah, but I still think Tarmogoyf's the best of the bunch. I think at the end of the day, the ability to put down a 3/4 or a 4/5. I mean, you have so easily. You have, creature, land, sorcery, and instant are all because it's not like this deck just has Verdant Catacombs, right? You also have Field of Ruin, which both powers up Tireless Tracker Extra and powers up Tarmogoyf. But you also you have access to play, and not even counting the weird stuff, right? Like randomly Nile spellbombing somebody or getting Liliana in the graveyard. It's just not hard to have Tarmogoyf be a 2-mana 4/5. And I think that the combination of the speed and the resiliency against people playing things like Lightning Bolt or creatures of their own, I still just think Tarmogoyf it's just a good card in the format.
Well, one of the things that I think that this deck does have over some of its competitors, like call it a Jund, is that a deck with Lightning Bolt is going to be less apt to be able to destroy your Tarmogoyf, but you've got tons of Dismembers, Fatal Pushes, and Assassin's Trophies to destroy their Tarmogoyf. So you're like a very good Tarmogoyf deck. Regardless of both Tarmogoyfs are going to be benefiting from what's going on in the graveyard. To that degree, I almost feel like I'd want to have there's one artifact that you can sacrifice in the main deck, maybe just more Mishra's Bauble or Street Wraith.
Nah, dude. Once you go down that path, you might as well just play Death Shadow. I think this deck doesn't need to make you don't have to work. That's part of what makes Tarmogoyf so good here is that you're not really working to make it good. It just naturally is good. I think if you're going to do the work, it doesn't take very much work before you might as well just be a Death Shadow deck. Because the Death Shadow deck gets way more leverage out of the work. Here, you don't do any work and you get most of the benefit. Not all, but you get a good chunk.
You had me at maybe it should just be a Death Shadow deck. Just other small thing, Liliana of the Veil, just another way to get different kinds of types into your graveyard. You can easily like turn 2 Tarmogoyf, turn 3 Liliana, and then discard something, and maybe give Tarmogoyf +2/+2 for all you know. Might be +1/+1, might be +2/+2. Might just get the blocker out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, Liliana of the Veil is good types. I do like the Liliana, the Last Hope in the sideboard. Ishkana Graph Widow.
That is also where my eye went. I mean, 5, you just have to pay 5 here, right? There's like no cheaty way to get this guy out.
No, just take your time. And in fact, you also eventually 7. You know?
Yeah.
I think this is just one of those. Sometimes you want to have one extra haymaker for when the games stretch out. You know, one card that can just take over the game, and it adds a form of inevitability. Like, for instance, there's a few things that having one Ishkana in your deck does, right? Like, if you have an Ishkana, like, even if your opponent has an Ensnaring Bridge down, you can still kill him through that, right? Like, there's a lot of little things that it does.
Sure. I mean, like, that kind of machine gun ability on the Ishkana doesn't run out, right? Provided you have some fuel for it.
You know, card if it's in Modern Horizons, Engineered Plague is going to be so sick in these black-green decks. Or just the format in general.
People don't play Knight of Souls Betrayal, and that card is available.
Yeah, but Engineered Plague costs 3, and it's one side.
I know the rule on that. I feel like Knight of Souls Betrayal but it's not played at all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. But Knight of Souls Betrayal would kill your own Tarmogoyf. I mean, you kill your own Dark Confidants, right?
That's true. I'm just curious. There's only one Kalitas in this entire 75. Like, I feel like that is a high leverage card for black green.
Yeah, I really like Kalitas right now.
You don't like it?
No, I do. I really do.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a great time for it. Yeah, I know. I think it's a great time for it.
The reason that I think this deck is like potentially doing so well is because between Kalitas, Scavenging Ooze, Main Deck Nihil, Spellbomb, etc., you have a lot of cards that are just pretty good cards that just are all playing on the bonus against Dredge, Arclight Phoenix, etc.
I think Arclight Phoenix is particularly important. Arclight Phoenix is still there's obviously lots of different decks are showing up, and there's plenty you can do, but I still think Arclight Phoenix is just warping the format. And I think that people in Opens and Grand Prix they're playing a bigger variety. I think that we're going to see Arclight Phoenix really be a defining force of Pro Tour London.
I mean, if you want to start with among the best technical players in the world, right, just giving them a handful of library manipulation and card advantage threats, I mean, that there's a lot of mechanics out there who are going to gravitate towards getting additional edges by just playing perfectly with so many touches to the library.
Speaking of Is It Phoenix, what do you think of Christian Baker's top 8 list from the Classic, with the twist, I guess, being the use of 4 Crackling Drakes instead of just 2?
He's got a lot of threat creatures here, so it's not just the Crackling Drakes, but also 2 Snapcaster Mages to go along with the 4 Thing in the Ice. I don't know. Some part of me is just like, this is preference. You know, some people have Monastery Swift Spears. I think that the Crackling Drakes are very meaningful, though, because just the Thing in the Ice and the Crackling Drake are both like haymakers that can win the game, and he just has a higher number of ones that can just win the game on their own, and that's, I think, especially useful in terms of fighting against people who have like a lot of 1-for-1 removal. Sometimes it's hard to kill a Crackling Drake just because it has 4 toughness or 4 casting cost, right? Like, so I think that's just helping to exhaust people's removal, especially when they have to spend removal sometimes on Arclight Phoenix that doesn't get rid of it permanently.
What do you think of Beacon Bolt out of the sideboard? It's kind of an interesting answer to Tarmogoyf.
I mean, like, I think that it's just fine. Like, that card is obviously played in Standard and played in both main deck and sideboard and Standard, and so much of the Is It Phoenix deck takes its cues from either the standard Drakes or the standard Phoenix decks, and it seems like it makes complete sense to me. I would not be surprised if I closed my eyes, opened them, and there was a Niv Mizzet in a modern blue-red deck in my near future.
Man, that's pretty extreme. I don't know if the format. I don't know that I believe in the format going that way, particularly with the London Mulligan rule on the horizon.
I mean, maybe not in the main deck, right? You could certainly.
That's true. It's a way better. Yeah, definitely. It's a way more attractive sideboard option. I can easily imagine some scenarios.
Yeah, like the mirror match, for example, right? Like all right, let's just both use our. I'm going to lightning axe your Crackling Drake. That stunk. You drew a card. I discarded a card. I'm going to, we'll kill this. We'll throw some surgicals around. Okay, I hit my 6th land drop. Niv Mizzet. Go. What are you going to do, right? Like, it's pretty tough to deal with that card in a deck that's all spells. I guess you could just axe it, right? I guess it would be costly at least. You're costing yourself two. Well, how many cards is that? You discard one and they draw one and you lose the axe. I don't think you're super happy about that if you're the Niv Mizzet guy, but it's still a great exchange for you.
We mentioned Kalitas having extra use right now, but I think even more topical, even more timely is the increase in popularity of Anafenza, the Foremost, which we see 1+1 out of Neil McIsaac's top 8 list, and then actually 2 main deck out of Anthony 18 list. What do you think of Anafenza? Do you see it continuing to hold up? I mean.
So, Anafenza was a conditionally awesome card from the moment it was printed, and it does a lot of stuff here, right? So, it's a human, which is obviously great in the human strategy. I think that maybe it's underplayed at 1+1 in Neil McIsaac's deck. This is obviously a curve consideration, right? There's a lot of 3s in this deck already, on account of Mantis Rider and Reflector Mage. But it's not too hard to cast, right? Like Ziggurats and Cavern of Souls, et cetera, can get this. It's not hard at all. And I think that it's like exactly what you want a decent percentage of the time. It's a great body for its cost, like 4/4 for 3. It's kind of awesome. I mean, what do you think? I think 1+1's maybe too low. Don't you you're playing against Dredge and you just want it?
Well, I think that once you sideboard, I think you could do better. But I like 2 main deck. Like, I'm not sure it's a high enough leverage sideboard. Maybe it is. But, like, I don't know. I think I would just play 2 in the main deck and then save my sideboard spots for other stuff like Sin Collector and Deputy of Detention and Auriok Champion and Dampening Sphere. So,
here's the thing. McIsaac doesn't have a lot of sideboard cards that are great against graveyard strategies, right? Like, he has an Anafenza.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I don't think it's high enough leverage. Like, I think that main deck, part of the value of main decking it is that when it's wrong, it's still a Doran the Siege Tower. Right? So, like, it's just on plan. Whereas when it's right, I don't think it's just game over the way that a lot of sideboard, like Auriok Champion is so high leverage, right? But the floor of Auriok Champion is very low in the wrong spots.
Do you think if the floor is low even in games that you want it? If it's a sideboard card, if it's in your deck, it's probably going to be good.
No. But what I mean is the Auriok Champion is much more of a sideboard card. You're only going to bring it in when it's just the best thing in the world, right?
Oh, I see. So it's not like back in the day when you would.
I don't think its ceiling is. I don't think Anafenza's ceiling is in the zip code of Auriok Champion ceiling. Auriok Champion ceiling is bananas.
Oh, it's
right?
next to unbeatable in the wrong spot, right? Like
Anafenza is really good in the right spots. It's miles from unbeatable. I think
it's slow, right? It's like not.
Totally.
It doesn't deal with everything, right? Like they have all kinds of stuff that Anafenza doesn't interact with.
Plus, they could deal with Anafenza in theory. It's not easy, but they could deal with it, right? Like I think that Anafenza is way higher floor and way lower ceiling, making it more ideal of a main deck card.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think that I agree with you.
I also just think that the sideboard spots in humans, it's deceptively important. They really need it because their main deck is so short on variety of interaction. And their options are so restricted by the package of Ancient Ziggurat, Cavern of Souls, Unclaimed Territory. So I think they just have to be very prudent with their sideboard spots, you know?
Yeah. But just to get back to the original question, I think Onofenza is awesome. I think you might be right to play more of those in the main deck. But what do you think about for Curve, right? Like, isn't humans they're kind of stuck with 4 Reflector Mage and 4 Mantis Rider, right? Like, I feel like Mantis Rider's so consistently the best offensive creature in their deck in game 1. And Reflector Mage is, like, pretty much their only out. Right? They have.
I don't think you can cut Reflector Mage or Mantis Rider. I think that if you're going to play 1 or 2 Onofenza's main deck, it's got to be an addition. So I think it is definitely curve considerations is part of the factor. I think you're totally right.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I mean, at the same time, you're talking about a deck that could just land a Noble Hierarch in the first turn and cast an Onofenza on turn 2, no problem. So it's not like we're talking about adding a 5 here, but it's a 19-land deck.
Yeah, but with 4 Vials and 4 Hierarchs.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that it's not a zero consideration.
Oh, no, not at all. I think it's the primary consideration. If it weren't for just how important Mantis Rider and Reflector Mage are, I'd be interested in more Onofenza's main deck. It's just I think that you need Mantis Rider and Reflector Mage even more, and you only have so much space.
I mean, do you think that there's maybe a Ria's emergence of Abzan that comes out that can, isn't humans? It's closer to the black-green deck that we were talking about a second ago, but maybe could exploit Onofenza. This seems pretty good to me. Like, the more I'm talking about this out loud, I'm like, this card's good.
I think you got to be very aggressive for Onofenza to be what you want in Modern right now. So, like, whatever, so for instance, it's not like Onofenza is like a natural pairing with a deck full of Thought Seizes and Inquisitions, right? It's not like it's bad. It's just that what you really want to do with Onofenza is just keep turning all your creatures sideways.
Yeah, but it might be a great pairing with Bloodbraid Elf. Yeah, aggro.
It's not necessarily bad. If you can make the mana work, that is a good pairing.
Yeah, like that's not bad at all. I think that's pretty solid, actually. So I'm gonna put some thought into this. Although it does break every rule I have for myself in Modern.
So it's not the Bloodbraid Elf. I don't think there's a ton to look at with the Bloodbraid Elf Jund deck from the top 16. Personally, your mileage may vary. I was actually more curious your take on the Burn deck in the top 4 and what you make of 1 Rift Bolt.
Well, this is a 19-land Burn deck, so Kevin got like one extra slot in, and you can either call it the Rift Bolt.
Wait. He got 1 extra slot in? He's playing 61 cards, bro.
What? All right. Wow. Mind blown. 61 cards and only 19 land? I don't know. First of all, I'd have 4 Rift Bolt. No question. That 61 cards?
I don't think I think that Lightning Bolt is like I think Goblin Guide and Lightning Bolt are just enough better. You just don't need the whatever copies, like whether it's like, let's just say you're just so sure that you want to make room for some of the different choices here where you're like, oh, I just really want the Boros Charms, all 4. I just want real, like some Burn card in this deck is less good than Lightning Bolt.
Okay, so I'm very opinionated on this, right?
I'm sure.
I did not realize the 61 cards. I don't even know how to continue, but I will. Okay.
You can't play a Lava Spike deck with 61 cards.
It's ridiculous.
That is a non-starter.
You can't play a 19-land deck unless you walk into the tournament, you're like, I'm not good. My deck isn't good. I'm going to win today because I'm lucky. If that's the thing that you're going to say, then you can make the decision to play a 19-land deck that plays 4 Boros Charm, 4 Searing Blaze, and 4 Lightning Helix, and sideboards for Skull.
And for Eidolon a Great Revel. I don't know how you play a Lava Spike deck with 16 2-drops nowadays.
You cannot play this many 2 casting cost cards, especially if 4 of them are Skullcrack. Like, Skullcrack is so bad.
Well, you're talking the Skullcracks in the board.
They're in the sideboard, yeah, but they're so bad. Like, but that's beside the point. You just can't play this many 2 casting cost cards. The Rift Bolts are way better than Boros Charms in a 19 land deck. Even presuming we had cut this down to 60. I don't know. I think that the other thing that people
no offense to Kevin Thanek, obviously a great showing, and the devil's in the details of some of the execution. I just think that from a theory standpoint, I cannot get into a 61 card burn deck. And this many 2s in particular, I think, is just way too many. Like, I think you got to play the Rift Bolts.
But the other thing that's a big problem in the structure of this deck is it's a 19-land, 61-card deck that's relying on Anger of the Gods. Like, that is your worst matchup to begin with, Dredge, right? It's real bad. And, I mean, I ended up not playing this weekend, in part because I was just like, it was my birthday, and my daughter wrote me the sweetest card, and she's like, I want to spend Saturday with you playing board games, so I chose to do that instead.
Aww.
But, like, I will usually stab somebody's eyes out to play Modern tournaments, and I got the clear. Catherine was like, go, have fun with your friends. People came in from out of town to go play in a tournament, and I just
Catherine's the best.
Yeah, she is, but I just wasn't feeling it because I was just like, I'm usually so confident. But look at all the Dredged performance. I was just like, this isn't the week to spend all my get out of jail free points. And the part of the reason is, like, the Dredge matchup is so challenging. I don't think that you can play 19 lands, 61 cards, and 2 Anger of the Gods and plausibly think that that's going to get.
No, but you can. He's got 4 Rest in Peace. It's not like there's no plan here. Right. Yeah, I mean, like, isn't Rest in Peace pretty clearly the top part of the plan? Anger of the Gods is, like, card 5 and 6, but it's also against humans and merfolk, right?
I mean,
I'm not saying it's great. I personally think this deck is – I just don't like playing cards that cost 3 or more in Lava Spike decks.
I 1,000,000% agree with you, and in the case –
I'd rather play 18 land and play 60 cards.
Yeah, but
personally, I would cut a bunch of 2s to make room for more Rift Bolts, though. Maybe that's just me.
The last version that I played literally had 3 Searing Blaze and 4 Eidolon of the Great Revel as its 2 casting cost cards. Every other card cost 1. So, I mean, but
that's easy when you don't put Boros Charming Lightning Helix.
Yeah.
If you don't play white, that's where you get the cards that cost 2 is white.
But the thing is, like, look, I mean, there's many different ways to build a viable deck. I'm just saying, in my experience, I cannot cotton a 61 card Lightning Bolt Lava Spike deck. That's one. Like, Lightning Bolt is so far and away the best card in this deck, and Eidolon of the Great Revel is so important to just.
It's not that far and away. I mean, it is. It's clear, but isn't this like the textbook close but clear? Lightning Bolt's not even that much better than Lava Spike.
It's not that much better than Lava Spike, but it's way better than Boros Charm. So the thing is,
okay, yeah, I agree.
In the close matchups,
all the cards that cost 1 are definitely so dope compared to the cards that cost 2, except for Eidolon of the Great Revel, which is a messed up Magic card.
Like, the games that you win that you're like, oh man, that was a really tough matchup. I can't believe I pulled that one out. You look at your hand at the end of or you look at the cards in your graveyard at the end of the game, and magically you cast 1 for every land that you had, and you just got 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And if one of those had been a 4 damage 2 casting cost card, you would have lost by 2 points. That's the thing. Like, you like in the games where, like, you have a ton of space. Yeah, Burn's really hard to interact with. But in the games where somebody is like, they put down a Vault Scourge and they've got a Arcbound Ravager and they've got like a Cranial Plating, and you're like, oh shoot, how do I live through this game? You need to draw the cards that are both cheap and impact the board or the face, depending on what you need, right? And like, that doesn't happen if you have too many of the 2 casting cost cards that don't only do one or the other.
All right, today's nobody asked for this for Modern Horizons. Please, please, please let this card not be in Modern Horizons. Well, actually, here's two. Here's two cards that I hope are both extremely not in Modern Horizons. Fire Blast and Price of Progress.
I don't even know what to say. I can't imagine that they would print Fire Blast. Right?
I hope they don't put chain. I hope they don't put Chain Lightning in either.
But why?
We don't need more of that.
Cards. Those cards are all nonsense.
Ruffle tail feathers.
There are such nonsense. Like the Legacy Burn deck exists because of those cards. Like nobody thinks that those cards are as good as the other things you could do in Legacy. Not even me. It's just you have a ton of them. You don't have to go to a second color. You never get wastelanded out, and they take 4.
One card I do think it would be crazy, but it might just be the reality we live in. I mean, it is already clear we live in the dankest timeline, but if Counterspell is in Modern Horizons, wowee, is that a game changer? And I think it might actually. I would be interested in such a world. So
let's talk about Counterspell for a second. If you jump over to the Open, 9th place deck in the Open, which was Azorius Control by Jeremy Myers, which I think is the highest placing fair deck in at least blue in that tournament. Like, this is already a very, very competitive strategy, right?
You're talking about like control decks, not
like a blue-white control
decks, right?
Straight blue-white control. No, I mean, I don't think Phoenix is a fair deck.
Yep.
I think Phoenix is like, I don't know how many standard deviations away from Hollow One Phoenix is, but I think Phoenix feels closer to Hollow One than to Azorius Control to me.
Okay.
So, we're talking about a strategy that's got Logic Knot and Negate, right? Like, for sure, Counterspell is taking some of these spots, if not the full 4, right? Every time in blue-white.
Extremely. I think Counterspell would be incredible here. It's so good with Teferi also. Like, I think that I would play 2-2 with Jace and Teferi instead of this 3. Like, we see 3 Jace and 1 Teferi here. I think the combination of Counterspell and Teferi is just the real deal.
How about the combination?
If that was the world we live in.
Of Counterspell and Snapcaster Mage. How do you feel about that?
Love it. I would play 4 Snapcasters too. Or less. You can play less if you want. It depends on the rest of your deck. I don't think Snapcaster Terminus is like the greatest thing ever. I think that Counterspell would be revolutionary, and I think that that's the world we might live in. I actually don't hate playing less than 4 Cryptic Commands if you have access to Counterspell.
But Jeremy didn't have access to Counterspell. I don't know about 3 Cryptic Command, 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination, and I can appreciate a Hieroglyphic Illumination, to be clear.
You know what?
I don't know about
I'm just saying, okay, so in the world that we live in now, I would play 4 Cryptic Commands, no question. In the world where Counterspell is legal, I think there's a really compelling case to be made for playing 3 Cryptic Command and 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination. I know it sounds crazy. I just think that first of all, I think Hieroglyphic Illumination is very good, and it is what you need. You need some of this, right?
I agree. Very good. It does. It's like most of an opt, right? An opt is very good, and it's most of a factor fiction, right? It's whichever half you have. But the thing is, when it's a forecasting cost spell, it's not that much more than a Cryptic Command. That's the thing, right? So, are you doing it for the 1?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Oh yeah, big time. Like I would play Think Twice in a lot of these Jeskai decks if it were not for Hieroglyphic Illumination. And the prospect of spending 5 mana, albeit in 2 installments, but 5 mana to draw a card is it's not like it's attractive, right? But the opportunity cost is relatively low.
But
here, the opportunity cost is way lower. It's one lower to do it early, and it's one lower in the big picture for the extra card when you get it late.
The thing about
you don't get to. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing about Think Twice though is because it's cheap at 2 and 3. Like it also fixes your land. I think that's one of the things that's really high in.
Hieroglyphic Illumination does too.
Like once.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really much of an argument about Hieroglyphic Illumination being more effective than Think Twice, though. I'm just saying, like, I think Think Twice does something different than Hieroglyphic Illumination.
I see. I mean, it does a little bit different. It's mostly the same thing. I guess I'm trying to point to the fact that having a low opportunity cost way to potentially smooth out your draw early that also gives you a kicker benefit of a little bit of extra cards later is what this deck is in the market for. And I think that obviously, like, there's one risk of Counterspell being legal. You can point to, like, right now there's this blend of sometimes people play Negate, sometimes they play Logic Knot, sometimes they play Remand, sometimes they play Mana Leak. Counterspell could potentially decrease the variety of 2-cost counterspells we see. But I think that in the big picture, the amount that Counterspell would increase the incentive to play fair is something that would be worth taking a second look at. You know, it's such an iconic card too, and it's a different experience than we see in the other formats. You know, Standard is never about the counterspell experience, not actual counterspell, right? And I think that
you mean like even including like, you know, Wizard's Retort, like this. I mean, when you say the counterspell, you mean like literal counterspell or cards that
literal counterspell?
Well, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been legal in Standard in 20 years or something.
Well, no, more recent than that, Mercadian Mask. But whatever. The point is that Vintage has this has mana drain, unlike Legacy, and Legacy has Force of Will, unlike Modern. Technically, Modern. Technically, Legacy and Vintage also have Counterspell, but nobody cares
because they have Force of Will and
Mana Drain. Right.
Well, actually, some people play Counterspell in Legacy. It's happened.
I'm not saying
it's happened.
No, it's fine. It shows up, right? But it's not like anybody cares. That's not like a defining feature of the format. And I think that Counterspell would be a potentially really healthy defining feature of the format for Modern, the way that Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek are.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how those cards line up with each other.
Counterspell would have some interesting implications to mana bases. For instance, if you look at this deck, there's 2 planes and 4 real Field of Ruin. And I think that playing 18 blue sources with 4 ops and 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination, it's fine. But there's a case to be made for having your mana base be a little bit different if you had access to Counterspell, right? Like, this deck doesn't have anything that's making it want to have, like, it doesn't have any blue on turn 2 type of cards beyond the occasional Logic Knot for 1 with a fetch land or something, right?
Yeah, would you want to play, like, Mystic Gate? Do you think that's...
That's exactly where I'm going. I think Mystic Gate is, like, a card to watch if Counterspell shows up in this new set.
Here's the thing. Like, what if the the Counterspell deck isn't even blue-white? Like, do you think we'd have, like, a mono-blue control deck? Is that, like, in the realm of possibility? I don't know. Might win with Tempest Djinn?
Why?
Might win with Spire Golem?
I don't know. I don't think Tempest Djinn is, like, super great positioned in Modern. It's okay, I guess. But, like, you just lose out so much if you don't have access to either Path to Exile or Fatal Push or Lightning Bolt.
So the thing that I like about Tempest Djinn, and to a lesser extent Spire Golem, although I don't know how plausible actually playing Spire Golem would be, is that right now, like, Grim Lavamancer seems to be, like, on the all-time low, right? He's really, really low right now. And that means that, like, the 4 toughness on those creatures is actually pretty solid, right? Like, probably not going to go anywhere unless...
Yeah, but he still
really
dies to Abrupt Decay.
That's true. I mean, but who doesn't, right? I guess
anything that costs 4?
Yeah. Spire Golem might not.
If you're gonna play Tempest Djinn, can I sell you on having like one Hallowed Fountain and one of the check land or something, or two Hallowed Fountains, and then just like a lot of fetch lands? Because like obviously, Tempest Djinn doesn't work with Hallowed Fountain explicitly, right? But if most of your white sources or most of your red sources, whatever, if most of your second color that was providing the removal was from fetch lands being able to find a single shot, and you want to have a second copy so in case somebody Field of Ruins you or something. But like, I think you could actually, if you were just so enamored by Tempest Djinn, I think you could get away with it a lot better if you just splashed a second color for removal and played, a dozen fetch lands or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have to twist my arm too hard to get like timely reinforcements in my mono blue deck, right? Like, that card seems like it's a card that I would really want to try to play.
Dude, Tempest Djinn Timely Reinforcements is a bizarro combo.
It might work out just fine.
Dude, you are on some next level stuff right there.
Yeah, I read some books. I was friends with this guy.
Dude, you want to? This is going to be. This is a little sacrilegious. Dude, this is a little sacrilegious. But you know what card I think is overrated? Terminus.
I believe it. I mean, I think 4 of is pretty high in a Supreme Verdict also deck, you know?
Yeah, me too. I kind of am into like 2 Terminus, 2 Supreme Verdict, 1 Wrath of God, and 1 Settle the Wreckage. Or maybe just no Wrath of God, but just 1 Settle the Wreckage, 2 Supreme Verdict, 2 Terminus. Or even just 1 Supreme Verdict, 1 Wrath of God, you know?
So I think like the Terminus is better in this deck than it is in a lot of decks, just because there's 3 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, so you can kind of set it up that way.
Yeah, but I guess I keep thinking about the world where Counterspell's legal. Maybe that's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you can also do stuff like, I mean, Opt Terminus is a great combo, right? Like, those are...
Definitely. So is Hieroglyphic Illumination.
Slightly less good than Opt, but still good.
Definitely. No, it's less good, but you can like, set it up, right? Like, you Jace, put back your card, and then on your opponent's turn, you Hieroglyphic Illumination, and then sweep their board.
Yeah, but anyway, end of the day, I definitely agree with your assessment on the Terminus. Just because, like, it's clunky, it doesn't even do anything a lot of the time that you're in trouble in this format. It costs a ton of mana when it doesn't cost 1, and it's not like this is like a Brainstorm Ponder format.
You know what card I just can't get into, and I've loved it historically. I've always been a big believer in it in general, but I just think it's so the wrong time. Circle Protection Red. And it's not that I don't think that you want the help against burn. I'm with it. To bring in Circle Protection Red when they're already going to board in 4 Cindervines, I don't know, man.
What if it's for Phoenix?
That's interesting. That's
right?
okay. No, okay, that's a good point. That's a really good point, actually.
Like, if I wanted to fight against burn, first of all, Lyra Dawnbringer is a great card in this format against burn. I mean, it's not as good as Baneslayer Angel, but...
No, it's really good.
It's fine. It's really good. And
I actually like the first Lyra better than the first Baneslayer because of how much I actually think Cast Down is going to continue to show up a little bit. But anyway.
If you've only got 1, Lyra is perfectly plausible. But Dispel is also a great card against burn.
I love Dispel.
Awesome against burn. I think Celestial Perch is fine, but like, I'm not super excited by it. But if you just want to sideboard cards against burn, you just sideboard the other 2 timely reinforcements. That Circle of Protection Red has meaning beyond the burn matchup. And I think, like, if you're just like Circle of Protection Red and then use your Opts and Hieroglyphic Illuminations to keep hitting your land drops, I'm not sure how that Phoenix deck is supposed to kill you, right? Like,
That's a really interesting idea. I think you're totally right.
They've got some horrors that they could try to flip over that might not be in their deck in a sideboarded game because those cards are...
No, it will.
They're super okay, right? They're not that good. But the thing is, like, if you're just in the situation where I'm just going to sit here with my Circle of Protection, biding time, hitting my land drops, Terminus starts getting really exciting because it does not put the Phoenixes into the graveyard. So... just a thing. I think that this card is good. And it's obviously like you don't really want to play against it playing Burn. Obviously, Cindervines is great against this deck. I mean, there's so many things you might want to Cindervines, just like every spell they cast, right? But they've also got key permanents like Search for Escanta, Detention Sphere, etc. you might want to hit.
So in terms of kind of continuity from what we were talking about last week, Amulet Titan continues to put up good finishes. Like in the Open proper, I put 2 copies in the top 8, and both of them were actually that the variant with Coalition Relic. And the one Walking Ballista I think is super dope, just in terms of being able to go find it as a 0, etc. But the 4 Sakura Tribal Scouts, makes sense. But what do you think of 3 Coalition Relics and then also 1 Primal Command?
I love Primal Command. Love it. Right?
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing. Coalition Relic costs 3, so you get it down. Maybe you get it down on turn 2 because you had Sakura Tribe Scout or, some other kind of accelerate. So it's down. Turn 3, you power it up, right? So going into your 4th turn, the Coalition Relic is already representing 5, right? So you can go straight into a 6, whatever 6 that might want to be. Probably Primeval Titan. That's one of its big things. And then separately, it even if you miss your land drop, it can help put you into your 5s for Primal Command. Here's what I like about Primal Command. 2 things. One, I think like Primal Command is one of those cards that it doesn't have that many at bats because it's not super popular, but in the matchups that it's good, like especially a sideboarded game that it's in your deck, I think you almost always win when you cast it, right? Like whatever modes you have on this card, it's just demolishing somebody. Like gain 7, get a Primeval Titan that I'm going to cast next turn is devastating for some opponents. Like absolutely will not win when you do that. Put a permanent on top of your library so that like you're just blanking them when you're at parity, and then get a Primeval Titan. Unbeatable sometimes. Like it's so. It's not that it's so good. It's like not better than Cryptic Command. It's just when you cast it, you win.
The options can be very high leverage, you're saying?
Like, yeah, I mean, just like, yeah, if you cast it right, like I feel like it's just, obviously sometimes it's really bad, right? It's just too expensive.
It's really slow.
Yeah, it's just too expensive. It just doesn't do anything in the matchup you're in. Like I don't know that I would often want Primal Command against Hollow One or Bridgevine or something. It's just too slow against those decks. But if it were in my deck, like if I were playing against Black-Green, right, or I'm playing against Jund, and like, all right, I don't want to go completely like super crazy, go off because they're setting up to defend themselves against an unfair draw, but I'm just going to play a fair game with them that includes Primal Command. I think that you can get a tremendous advantage with this card. And like one that could feel insurmountable for the opponent.
Dude, talk to me about Consulate Crackdown. Like, I get that it's one-sided, so like you can play it and not blow up your own Coalition Relic and Amulet of Vigor. But is Consulate Crackdown really the best thing you can do if you want to beat somebody who's playing a Ensnaring Bridge or Affinity deck?
No, I mean this is a rich person's card, right? Like, this is literally a card that you play if you can get 5. Like, that's a thing. And the problem is sometimes it's not that you can't get 5, right? This is the kind of deck that is designed to generate a super fast Primeval Titan, which costs 6. The problem is, like, under pressure, like, against decks with Thoughtseize, I think, like, or decks that can kill you super fast, it's not...
You can't even go find it. It's not like you have extra Ancient Stirrings or Summoner's Pact equity or something,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not into this card.
Would you play Pernicious Deed if it was legal?
Well, that's a good question. Yes.
Because like the one engineered explosives makes a lot of sense in this. I mean, 3 really if you count the 2 in the main deck. But like engineered explosives is such a good combo with Teleria West. But like Pernicious Deed is like a stronger card, right? And Pernicious Deed, I mean, it's not great with Amulet of Vigor, right? But like other than the Amulet of Vigor combo, and I'm not saying this is the best place for Pernicious Deed. The best place would probably be some kind of a Sultai deck using Jace the Mind Sculptor, Liliana of the Veil, and Pernicious Deed.
Because it doesn't destroy planeswalkers, right?
Right. But
yeah, that would be outstanding.
Here's the part. I keep wondering if this format, I feel like this new set, I could imagine them putting some sort of a Pernicious Deed variant in it.
In the Modern Horizons.
What if they made, what if Modern Horizons had a Pernicious Deed that instead of the old Pernicious Deed wording, it was a different Pernicious Deed that just hit non-land permanents. So it didn't blow up the artifact lands that are not legal, and it did.
It doesn't blow up the artifact lands that are legal. They're indestructible.
Right, and it does hit planeswalkers though. Where would you expect such a card to show up? Or like, for instance, what about just like a sorcery that's just like 1 black, black, green, or just maybe even just black, black, green, green, but it's just destroy all non-land permanents that cost 3 or less.
Isn't there a card like that in the original Ravnica set? But
I'm saying non-land, not just creatures. I'm talking about non-land.
Isn't there one that's black, green, X, destroy everything X and X and below?
Yeah, but I'm talking about really good.
All right. Yeah, I don't.
You're not that into it?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not good at thinking about these kind of imaginary scenarios in the same way that you are. I mean, I'm a big Akroma's Vengeance guy, right? I had Akroma's Vengeance when I shouldn't have been, but I did it.
You Akroma's Vengeance even when when it didn't have cycling, and you just had to play the Lorwyn one, right?
I don't know if I went that far. I loved an Akroma's Vengeance, though. I mean,
you didn't play Austere Command?
No, I think what happened was
You're such an Austere Command kind of guy.
No, I think Michael Jacob, your other Michael J. friend, took my deck, took out the Akroma's Vengeances, and put in Austere Command. That was my recollection of what happened.
Okay. So Counters Company showed up again. That was a real big in the public eye about 8 months ago. Largely fallen by the wayside with the advent of Arclight Phoenix, showing up in the hands of John Capetta, top 16, with a couple of little things. Like we expect to see the Spellskite, Walking Ballista, Viscera Seer, all this stuff, but like one Liliana Heretical Healer and one Ronus the Indomitable. Talk to me about those two.
Well, Ronus the Indomitable obviously is just that's a good sink for when you have a ton of mana, right?
When you have infinite mana from the Devoted Druid plus the Vizier of Remedies combo, where if you get those two cards together, obviously you just have infinite mana.
And it's a heck of a solid fair card, right? If you just play this thing and then, it could just be attacking. It's not hard. And 5/5 indestructible Death Touch with additional upside options. It's not bad. I don't know. I feel like its floor is very high and its ceiling is infinity. Right? So
Isn't this just such a weird time for these miscellaneous graveyard combo decks that are like not like for instance, people are just main decking Surgical Extractions and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a graveyard combo deck, really, is it? I mean, don't you mostly go like infinite mana, search up my deck? Well, I mean, you have 2 Duskwalk Recruiters, but like, I guess it's not that much of a graveyard deck, right? Like, there's one Postmortem Lunge, right? Like
you've got one postmortem lunge. I guess you've largely moved away from there's still Viscera Seer.
Yeah, it's there.
But like you don't even have Malira anymore with Kitchen Finks, right? Like this deck is really, I guess you're right. This one has really moved away from the graveyard shenanigans. That's okay.
I think Liliana's kind of silly. It's not. I mean, it was obviously heavily played in the standard version of a collected company when these cards were legal in standard. I don't know. It seems to me like it's okay. I mean, like, are you real excited to play like a 2/3 lifelink for 3? Like that's.
I'm not excited to play a 2/3 lifelink for 2.
Yeah, it's just like it's not. I don't know. The flip is that really the thing that we're going for? I just think it's a one of. I think it's kind of silly. Not into it at all.
You know which card I am into, though?
And it's terrible on the mana. That's the other thing.
That's true. Double black is not trivial, actually. I really wish, actually, you could just play more Gavani Townships. I don't believe in one Gavani Township. I think that card... all I ever want to do is just activate Gavani Township. And this deck has, like, 2 Field of Ruin, 1 Tectonic Edge, 4 Forests, 1 Plains, 1 Ghost Quarter, 2 Horizon Canopy. Liliana actually seems horrific on the mana base.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan at all. I mean, there are obviously some, like, Maelstrom Pulse, Abrupt Decay, etc. in the sideboard, so there's some black splash supported here, but, like, double black, and it's not like you get this card and, oh wait, I just won, right? It's fine. But everybody who can kill a creature can kill this thing for 1.
It is actually a dope card to Court of Calling for, though, right? Like, your opponent goes, they play a removal spell on your creature, and then you literally just respond by courting for Liliana, and then the removal spell resolves, and then they kill the creature, and you flip it immediately, and you just have a Planeswalker.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a pretty good play. I'm not saying it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. I'm just saying that's a pretty good play.
Yeah, of course, like, you're gonna get, like... tremendous like leverage and value on the romantic one-ofs, right? Like in the spots that you want them. So I think that in some formats that's really cool to do. I just think that Modern is Modern is a street fight and it's fast. So I feel like you're just not in the situations that you just have the liberty to do this, especially when you have a deck that's homogeneous is the wrong word because a lot of these cards have different functions, but it's just
extremely.
Like you have so many things you could be doing that would also be highly valuable, right? Like
you have it's the opposite of homogeneous. You have a outrageously wide toolbox.
Yeah, so I didn't do that super cool, kill it flip play. Okay, instead I could just do some other pretty good play. Right? That's the way that I look at the Liliana here. Okay. Like, what if I get a Selfless Spirit instead, right? Like, is that so different? It is. It's much worse.
So, what do you think of the Celestia sort of take on the Death and Taxes archetype? Like, Legacy, obviously, it's been a staple for quite some time. The whole white splash green or green-white, whatever, Death and Taxes, Flicker Wisp, Aether Vial type of shenanigans. Evan Buchholz, apologies on the name, but like top 32 with a Death and Taxes deck using Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Scavenging Ooze, Restoration Angel, Renegade Rallier, Leonin Arbiter, Flicker Wisp, Aether Vial, Path to Exile, like the whole package. What do you think of Evan's take?
I think that the green splash is really important if you're going to play a deck like this. Among the things that Evan is getting is those Scavenging Oozes. And, like, if you just look at this deck just straight up, like, what's its resistance to Dredge?
You got a Cyborg Grafdigger's Cage.
Yep. A
Tormod's Crypt. A Rest in Peace.
So I think that a big chunk of the ability to interact with Dredge and to a lesser degree Phoenix comes from the green splash. I mean, there's other things, right? Like Resto Angel just beats a Phoenix in a fight, which is kind of cute, right? Like they're like, all right, here's my big turn. And you're just like, all right, Resto Angel, come in, blink some guy that maybe gets me some value, eat your Phoenix. That's pretty cool. But like just having the Scavenging Ooze is, I think, very valuable there also.
Yeah, I agree. I actually wonder about what kind of graveyard hate they're going to put in Modern Horizons. Kind of seems to me that, like, it would be shocking if they didn't have at least, like, minimum one, but probably two graveyard hate cards, one of which is, like, a little bit more targeted, and one of which is, like, some splash damage type of deal, you know, like incidental damage.
I think I'd want to see, if they were going to do something with a reprint, I think I'd want to see Surgical Extraction reprinted.
No, they're not doing anything like that. They're not going to reprint any cards that are already legal.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the only reason that I say this is because I feel like the secondary market price of Surgical Extraction is out of hand.
Yeah, but that's not. It's not. This isn't that. This is not that.
Okay.
I just think that, like, and I know I talked about this before, but, like, I just think that like a Yixla Jailer that costs, like, imagine a Yixla Jailer for one, or like a 2-mana 3/3 or something. Just some other, like a Yixla Jailer that's priced to move.
Text of the cards in the graveyard or something.
Right, or something that makes, or imagine like a Grafdigger's Cage appearing on a 2-cost. Now, it probably wouldn't go in a Celestia, you know, Death and Taxes deck. It'd probably be more of a black card, but I just think that there's plenty of artifact and white and like, I think Scavenging Ooze, Rest in Peace, Relic of Progenitus, Tormod's Crypt, all that stuff's plenty. I actually think that it's the perfect time for a black creature hate bear, like a much better Withering Wretch.
I mean, you just point out the Yixla Jailer, like, what's wrong with the Jailer? Like, nobody plays this creature.
Because it's just not good enough. It's just not that strong of a card.
But isn't it outstanding against a lot of the... I mean, first of all, it's not very good against Phoenix, which has lightning bolts. But it seems more than good enough against Dredge to me. Like, I think I'd rather have Jailer than a lot of other cards, right? Like, it turns off...
Yeah, but once you're playing a card that's just not good enough to be main deckable...
Like, then you want it to be good.
I want something that's good enough to be main deckable. And I think that a 2-mana 2/1 is just not close. I think if Yixla Jailer costs 1, that would be a different story. Right? But, like, at 2...
It was still 2/1? I mean, like, that's an outrageous card now.
No, I'm serious. Still like a 2/1 for just literally Yixla Jailer, but for a mana cheaper, and maybe give it better types. Make it a human. I don't care.
Wow. Like, yeah, you're serious. Right. It's clearly an example of creep, but it's not dumb, right? Like, it's not. It's not an archetype.
I don't think it's not. It's not power creep the same way. Yixla Jailer is like they just made some messed up graveyard hate cards.
Well, I mean, they made up some messed up graveyard cards. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. Sorry, graveyard. I meant graveyard. You're right. I meant graveyard cards. They got messed up graveyard cards, and I think they need to pull back a little. It gets old.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at, like, the Dredge deck. They could interact with the Yixla Jailer, but they would not want to play against that card. Like, it's super good against them.
They would especially not want to play against it if it cost 1.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, even their Dark Blast doesn't work. Like, how terrible is that? They're like, I'll just Dredge to my Dark Blast. No, you won't. That's not what's going to happen here. Hardcast Conflagrate.
Yeah. Dude, did any of the Arclight Phoenix decks from either the Grand Prix, did any of them jump out at you?
I think that I would just shout out to Austin Collins, who was the winner of the Open, the large event. He's the youngest Open winner ever, and he just took it down. That's the deck isn't like super different. It's got 1 Flame Slash, 2 Surgical Extractions in the main deck. So yeah, obviously there's some customization that's going on in different potential directions. Obviously, Flame Slash is not the most versatile card in the world, but it certainly rips a Crackling Drake out of the sky for 1 mana, and is a great combination with Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah. Also, I guess I kind of want to also just give a shout out to Matt Costa and Brian DeMars, a couple of good men putting up big finishes with these. Is it Phoenix? Shaheen Surani too. The actual Grand Prix list that I wanted to kind of get your take on with Sam Black with his Lantern deck using a Kea Orzhov Usurper.
Oh, well, I mean...
And we've seen a recent trend towards, the Whir of Invention prison instead of Lantern. What do you think of Sam Black and the throwback with the, going full on Ghoul Caller's Bell, Pixis of Pandemonium, Codex Shredder, just all the nonsense?
Well, I mean, Sam has loved this archetype for as long as it's kind of existed.
Before it was good. Sam was playing it way before it was good.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like it's less of a throwback than just like this is just the deck that he likes.
The deck that he likes is always gonna just still be the 2 or 3 colors of creatures we're sacrificing with sack outlets.
But like here, I think like the Orzhov Usurper it's like a meaningfully different card than has been in this archetype before, and obviously it has tremendous leverage in this archetype. It's very, very different than any of the stuff that this deck's been able to do before. It just does different things than Lantern's had access to, and it solves some problems that they might have had. Like just as an example, right? You can exile cards from a graveyard if the opponent is tapped out and you get their Ancient Grudge, right? Like. That's a useful thing. Or you can get somebody's Phoenixes or something like that, which is a very valuable thing that you might want to do in the current environment. Plus, I think really meaningfully, this card can kill people. And Lantern, was not fast at that.
Well, Surgical Extraction is pretty sweet of a combo with Kea also, right?
Yeah, it's like Lightning Bolt, right?
Right, like the fact that you can surgical their Arclight Phoenix, and now there's 4 more cards exiled. That makes her ultimate that much more deadly that quick. Do you think there's any case to be made for playing more of a focus on Pixis of Pandemonium because of its exile effect? Or do you think that's just too hardcore?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like the problem with this strategy is that there's so many cards that do nothing.
They almost all do nothing.
Like
there's Ensnaring Bridge and then cards that do nothing.
I feel like this deck has a lot of cards that if you draw them and you don't draw Ensnaring Bridge, you just get killed. Right? Like that's the thing. Thank goodness for Ancient Stirrings, right? Like that's. It's obviously good at deploying all those cards at the same time. But to answer your Pixis of Pandemonium question, no, I don't. I don't think so, but I might be wrong. I'm not an expert on Pixis of Pandemonium versus other cards that don't do very much by themselves.
Did any of these other lists really speak to you?
Yeah. I think Case Johnson with Hexproof. Just what do you think about this? Like, whenever this deck comes up, what are you thinking? Like, of all the decks in the modern format, you could be playing Arclight Phoenixes right now. Glade Cover Scout and Rancor. Link.
It's pretty. I mean, I don't know. Is it really that much different than a Lava Spike deck? You're kind of just goldfishing, right? And you're just kind of just racing, and you're just seeing what happens.
I'm trying to put this in my head. I think it's very different than a Lava Spike deck.
Why?
Well, I don't know. I feel like the Lava Spike deck is very cerebral, and I feel like maybe I just don't have a strong.
No, don't get me wrong. I agree. I agree with you. I think Lava Spike is extremely underrated as a skill testing strategy. But I'm saying it's on the same axis where you're kind of just goldfishing, right?
You're just all right, here's my guy. Here's all your cards, putting on,
and you
my
just
guy.
see how fast you can kill him.
Yeah. I'd have to think about that more. I don't know. The one of the things that I love about the Lava Spike, let's just compare these two decks, right? Case Johnson's deck and Sam's deck. This deck in game one, especially, is just going to get locked out by Sam and can't win, right? Versus the Lava Spike deck has a lot of options, a lot of possibility of winning, right? Like Sam isn't good at removing an Eidolon, for example, or you could just like rip burn and potentially kill him before he, locks you out of the game. However, he's going to do that, and so I think like that is a difference.
All right. So I guess in closing, what do you think is like what are you most excited to see out of Modern Horizons? Right, like they've only previewed 2 cards so far, and I think Serra the Benevolent is actually kind of being underrated a little bit in the community. I think Serra the Benevolent is actually like pretty interesting in either a Spirits deck or some sort of a flying token deck using like Spectral Procession, Bitter Blossom, and Lingering Souls.
Yeah, so Serra the Benevolent is a legendary planeswalker from the new set. It's 4 mana. It's white 2, and has a starting loyalty of 4, and has 3 abilities. The +2 is creatures you control with flying get +1/+1 until end of turn. So loyalty goes up a lot for a miniature Crusade effect. -3, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. So it's like a
AKA where your bread is buttered.
Yeah, its fail state is 4 mana, Serra Angel, still have my Planeswalker in play, right? Like that's pretty good, I think. And then -6, if you get an emblem if you control a creature, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1, reduces it to 1 instead, so it's got a worship on it. I mean,
but worship is such a good permanent to get from your emblem that's almost impossible to interact with.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very meaningful card. Like people play actual worship in Modern, despite the fact that there's more than enough ways for decks that are locked out by worship to destroy the worship, from Cindervines to Destructive Revelry, etc. And they're not easily going to be able to destroy Serra the Benevolent's emblem. And it's so easy to get there, right? You're just like +2 one time, untap -6. It's like that's like a one turn.
Right. If you're playing against a combo deck, as long as they don't kill you on the next turn, you get worship the second, like one turn of Serra being unmolested, and you have access to worship in case it locks them out.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about cards like we were saying earlier in the humans analysis, like Auriok Champion. Like there's gonna be cards or creatures that like it's like the old days. You can't remove them, right? Like how do you kill an Auriok Champion if you're black-red? How do you kill it if you're mono-red? You don't, and then that means that their Serra the Benevolent is eventually just going to beat you.
I don't think a Ball Therapist is nearly as good as Serra the Benevolent. It's kind of a curiosity that I would try with Lingering Souls, but I think Serra the Benevolent is actually pretty good.
I think this is like a real deal archetype maker, right? Because
Serra, yeah,
I don't think it fits real cleanly into any existing archetypes, right? Maybe Spirits.
Yeah, I think Spirits. It also might be the amount that is needed to push Spirits into just being straight blue-white. What's more, I think Serra the Benevolent is like a perfect inclusion for a black-white tokens deck.
Oh,
I would play 2 Serra, 2 Sorin, call it a day.
I like the idea of black-white tokens. I think that deck is probably underrated right now. It has so many good things, doesn't it?
It does.
I think Bitter Blossom is like.
I love Bitter Blossom with Serra.
Well, I like Bitter Blossom in general, right? I think it's like so
I like
underrated.
Bitter Blossom in general.
Yeah,
I love it.
Bitter Blossom, like it like does all these little force fieldy things that people just like, force field isn't good. Really? It's like locking out a Death Shadow or something. Or you're playing a deck that might not be able to kill a Gurmag Angler easily, but it's just like force fielding the Gurmag Angler while you do your other stuff. It's so not bad, and it's so low cost, and its upside is insane. That's the other thing. When you're combining it with cards like, Hideaway Lands or anything like that, it's great against removal. That card's great.
All right, I'm going to run 5 cards by you. You tell me if they would be a hit in Modern Horizons, if you're into it, I'm sorry. If it would just be amazing, if you're kind of into it, but it's just a thing. If you're kind of against it, but you could see it, or if there's just no chance, right?
I'm ready.
Vindicate.
I'm kind of into it.
You're kind of into it?
Kind of.
How good would it be?
It'd be playable. It's not going to
It'd be playable?
It's not going to change the world.
You don't think it would change the world?
I mean, it's good. I'm kind of into it.
Wasteland.
I mean, come on. Come on. That's not a real question. That's off the charts good.
I would be extremely against it, incidentally.
Same. Yeah, so let's have all mono red and mono white decks. Wasteland.
Land tax.
Oh, very into it.
Would it be good?
It would be. I think it would be great, and I'd have to put some more thought into it, but I would be very into it.
You'd be very into it, huh?
Yeah. So I'm like pretty into Vindicate. I think Wasteland would be a horrendous error, and I'd be pretty into land tax.
Spinal Villain.
I don't know what that is.
From the Legends expansion set, Spinal Villain is 2 and a red for a 1/2 that has tap to destroy target blue creature.
I'm into it.
You think it'd be good?
So into. Oh yeah. I love those. I love those like intrepid hero kind of cards. Because you got to get them in the spot where people can't kill your creature. That's the thing. It's not like Grim Lavamancer is the most unstoppable card of all time. It's just that Affinity and humans don't have any creature removal. So it's in play. It just kills their whole squad, right? I love those kind of cards. You just have to have a spot.
If you just have Spinal Villain against a Merfolk deck?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it can't kill Master Waves, but it kills everybody else. Master Waves will still just get you, but, you'll go down swinging.
So it's not reprintable straight up because of the reserve list, but Gauntlet of Might.
Well, I mean, do I get a Nintendo Power Glove when I have Gauntlet of Might? If you play the card, I think you have to have Nintendo Power Glove while you're playing. I would not be into it.
Do you think it'd be good?
No, it's expensive. It just doesn't fit into like if you're gonna play a bunch of mana, right? And to get like a effect, that's just contingent on having like some expensive permanent. Why don't you just Valagooding or something? It's just like not interested. Or just be faster than this. Not into it.
Okay, last one. Fire Ice.
Wow. Super into it.
Would it be good?
Yeah, I think so.
And you'd like the effect it would have on the format?
Well, who would play it? Jeskai Control might play some.
I bet Arclight Phoenix would.
Yeah, I think they might. I almost feel like no one's Scepters right now, right? No one's Scepters, but maybe people would side in Scepters if this card were available. Maybe people should side in Scepters anyway. What do you think about that? So,
dude, I like the cut of your jib.
What if you're Arclight Phoenix? You have no artifacts, right? So nobody sides in artifact removal against you. You're just like, game 2, turn 2, Isochron Scepter, go. Are they just dead? Just lost the game right there? Right? That's the best idea I've had this week. That's good, right?
And that is saying something.
Isn't that good? Like, they can't interact with it. You have like an awesome Fire Ice? Yeah. I would Magma Jet on that in a second. Magma Jet? What do you think?
Medium.
What if I had like some sort of an ancient grudge or a destructive revelry on that thing? How about that, Patrick?
Sounds win more. Dude, Isochron Scepter probably is actually underrated.
Yeah, it is a sideboard card, right?
Yeah. Nobody ever sideboards it, and somebody probably should.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do this 2 weeks in a row. It's not like when Saito or Raph Levy like won like a consecutive Grand Prix with similar decks. You can't do it 2 weeks in a row, but you can do it.
Dude, what about Recoil? I would love to Recoil.
Oh, see, here's the thing. I'm only pretty into Vindicate, but Recoil would be awesome.
Oh my god, I would take Recoil home. I would introduce Recoil to Mother. I would reshape my life around Recoil.
Recoil would bounce you. You would be discarded.
And it would be worth it.
You'd have a good time on the way, though.
All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault.